Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya to all of you who are joining today for the third session. This is going to be one of the very interesting sessions that we are going to read a very beautiful Jataka tale at the end of the session, and we'll be diving deep into some of the aspects of the Jataka tales. So let's begin with our presentation. Okay, so today we will be going through some of the very key aspects of Jataka tales. So before we begin, I titled this third session as multi-dimensional world of the Jataka stories, and we can see that how the stories evolved over the period of time and how they offer multifaceted teachings taken together, or even a single story can offer a lot of different perspectives, as we have been seeing from last two sessions. And also, the stories talks about universal ethics which are applicable at any place at any time. So this is what we are going to do today in the session, that we are going to look at how, one Jataka tale is narrated in several ways, and we will be beginning with the Jataka story that we shared in the last session, case of Vyagri Jatak. And I'm going to show you different variations of the story. And then we'll be looking at the different personalities of the Bodhisattva in the Jataka tales, like good, bad, and insignificant. We will be, deriving from the book of Naomi Appleton, who has written a wonderful book on Jataka tales. And then we are going to briefly touch upon justice and human dignity in the Jataka stories, and how, some of the stories, fight the Varna or, social ostracization. And also we will be looking at a few stories about, well, just one story actually, about, the philosophy that is, embedded in the Jataka story. And then three stories particularly related to Abhidhamma. And then in the end, we will have Shilpi reading the Ruru Jataka. And I'm going to take you through some of the very beautiful uh, arts around the Ruru Jataka in India and China. So let's begin. This is what we have been studying in the last session. We were discussing about this beautiful Jataka tale, which is so inspiring. But here I'm going to show you how this Vyagri Jataka or the Tigress Jataka has multiple actant, and the how the story has been told. So this is a very well-known story in the northern Buddhism, what we call China, Japan, in Danhong caves, or even in other parts of the Gandhara. I'm going to show you how popular it was. And it does not feature in the Jataka Atthakatha. That's a very interesting thing, that Jataka Atthakatha constitute 547 stories, and this Vyagri Jataka doesn't feature in the Pali canons. However, interestingly, the Jataka is painted in the Sri Lankan Buddhist alluviar in Matale. In Matale, this Jataka is painted, and there are many versions of the Jataka. And last time, in the last session, we read the version of Aryashura in Jataka Mala. And there are basically three versions. In one version, the Bodhisattva is Mahasattva, or his also name is also given Karuna Rekha. And in one of the versions, here Bodhisattva is ascetic Brahmin. In the Aryashura's version, the name is not given, but in the other versions, two names are given. One is Brahma Prabha and another is Satyavrata. And then there is another story that has Bodhisattva as a Chandanamati. And this story takes place in Gandhara. So, these are basically three versions of the Vyagri Jataka. And according to the travelogues of Phashang, Fashian, and Xuanzang, they visited the place where the stupa was built. However, there is a caveat. The Nepalese Buddhists locate the place in Nepal at a place called Namo Buddha. So, that is the place associated with Bodhisattva sacrificing his body to the hungry tigress. And this picture, actually, we should be paying more attention to this picture because it's a very beautiful picture. In one frame, the three acts are shown that the Bodhisattva at the top is hanging his cloth, and then he is throwing himself in the abyss. And in the bottom, we can see that the tigress is devouring the Bodhisattva. So you see, this is a very beautiful painting by Shashin Shiko, and I'm going to show you some of the beautiful art forms around this. So this is I think this is one of the earliest representation of the tiger Jataka or Vyagri Jataka, which is found in the present day Pakistan. So you can see that there is a stupa because the story starts with the stupa. The Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, brings up the stupa, and then he relates as to why the stupa was built, and he relates to the story of the Vyagri Jataka. And this is what is still found, and I think this is very earlier form of the representation of the Vyagri Jataka, which is found in Pakistan. So you can see it. There is a sketch here, and there is actual depiction on the rock. The earlier depictions were similarly done in India also. In places like Sanchi, you can find the stupas engraved like this. So let's look at the Vyagri Parivrata in the Suvarna Bhasa Samsutta. It's a very beautiful sutta, very famous in northern Buddhism like China, Japan, and Korea. It's called the Sutra of Golden Light. And in the Sutra of Golden Light, this story comes, and this story goes like this, very short, so I'm going to read it. So when Shakyamuni Buddha was in Panchala, he manifested a stupa up from the earth and showed the bones laid in 7 jewel ornamented boxes. He then related a story about them. Once there was a king Maharatha and his sons Mahapranada, Mahadeva, and Mahasattva. The three princes encountered a tigress with her. Now there is this bracket, 5 cubs. So in some of the versions there are 7 cubs. 7 cubs. In some of the versions there are 2 cubs. So with her in the forest, she seemed to have delivered the cubs just 7 days before and be so starving enough to eat them. Mahasattva. Now B offered himself to her, but she did nothing. So he stabbed his throat with a bamboo stick. The tigress, looking at his blood, ate him. At that moment in the palace, see, the mother queen had a nightmare in which her breasts were cut, all her teeth were wrenched out, and an eagle killed the youngest of the 3 does she kept. So it's a symbolic. I'm going to talk about the symbols in the Jataka, particularly psychological symbols, in the 5th session. So then the king and the queen were told of Mahasattva's death, went to where he was killed, and held memorial service for his relics. Shakyamuni repeated this story in a verse. So verse, Mahasattva jumped down from a cliff. The mother queen had milk overflowing from her breasts and pain throughout her whole body, and had a nightmare in which an eagle killed the youngest of the 3 does she kept. The king searched for them and found the 2, and heard that the youngest had jumped down from a cliff. The king brought the 2 back. Having told this, Shakyamuni revealed that in his past life he was Mahasattva. Shuddhadana was Maharatha. Maya was the queen. Maitreya and Manjushri were the 2 brothers. And Mahaprajapati was the tigress. And 5 bhikshus were the cubs. The king and the queen made a stupa there and laid Mahasattva's relics in it. After Shakyamuni told the story, the stupa returned into the earth. So why I am showing you all different versions? Because they are very significant for us to understand the world of Jataka. That the stories are very dynamic. They are evolving, and the basic structure remains the same, but the complementary variations, like whether they were 2 cubs, 5 cubs, or 7 cubs, varies. So just to show you the artistic rendering of this from a very beautiful cave structures in China called the Dunhuang caves. They have a very beautiful depiction of the Vyagri Jataka, Mahasattva, sacrifice for the tigress. And this is from the cave number 247. You can see it stupa in the corner, top corner. You can see the stupa, and it's very beautifully done stupa. And at the next to that stupa, you can see the 3 brothers, looking down. And in this one of the very interesting depiction, the black tigress is devouring the Bodhisattva in in the bottom. You can see that it's not very clear, but if you look carefully, you can see that. So in one panel, they have depicted the Vyagri Jataka. I'm going to show you the details of this last. You can see here the hungry tigress and her cubs, and the Mahasattva who has offered his body to the starving tigress. So this is the stupa. You can see it. So this is the 5th century version of offered by Pashang, who traveled to India and also went to Gandhara. And this is what he relates. The names are different, but you can see this is in the extant Chinese corpus. So Buddha once visited a large city whose name was Vaishravana Pala in the country of Gandhara. And there he related the following story. 9 kalpas ago, Bodhisattva was born as crown prince Chandanmati of a great kingdom called Gandhamati. His father was King Gandhashri and his mother was Queen Shema Megha. The crown prince was fond of practicing charity, but fearing to put his family into destitution by using up all the riches of the royal house, he secretly went to another kingdom called Vidisha, the present day Bhopal, where he sold himself as a slave to a Brahmin for 1,000 gold coins. He then gave an alms to the poor. While he was collecting firewood on a mountain, he found a great amount of Gosirch Chandana, the best Chandana wood, said to cure all diseases, with which he then cured the king of Vidisha, who suffered from leprosy. The king was very pleased, and after freeing the prince from slavery, sent him back to his native kingdom. However, the prince again left the palace and went deep into the mountains to join a group of ascetics. One day he saw a tigress with 7 cubs. You see the number of cubs vary. Freezing in the snow, the setting changes. Here comes the snow. At the bottom of a deep gorge, he told his teacher and 500 fellow ascetics that he wanted to sacrifice his body to save the tigress and the cubs. Although his teacher tried to stop him, saying that he was still young and had much to learn, the prince replied that in the distance past, he had made a vow to give his body 1,000 times and had already done so 999 times in his former lives. This then was the final occasion to fulfill his vow. He jumped up to the top of a high precipice, threw himself off, landed dead in front of the tigress. His parents, the king and queen, built a stupa there containing the prince bones. So you see, this is the story. And this is another depiction of the Vyagri Jataka in cave number 428 in Mogawa, Dhamma. There are many beautiful Jataka stories painted in this. This picture is not clear, but this will give you some idea of the painting. These are very old paintings that are still there and in a place called Dunhuang in China. So why, I thought this is important is to share with you that how this story was popular, that, it was depicted all over the places, right from, Gandhara to China in Mogao caves in Dunhuang 2 times, 2 different caves we find this Vyagri Jataka. And also we have seen how it was carved in the stones in, present day Pakistan. And the story is very popular. It comes in Aryashura's Jataka Mala as well. But, there the protagonist is the ascetic Brahmana whose name is not given. So this is very interesting to look at, how the stories have changed. And, in the 6th session, I'm going to show you how the story changed politically also in the modern times, or made to change politically in the modern times. The ethnography of the Jataka tells. But that's for the last session. So what we are going to look at today is, the personality of Bodhisattva in Jataka stories. And Naomi Appleton has written a wonderful book titled as Jataka Stories in Theravada Buddhism, narrating the Bodhisattva path. And in this book, she segregates, categorizes various Jataka according to the status of the hero. For example, she talks about good Bodhisattva, bad Bodhisattva, and insignificant Bodhisattva. And in the good, the stories related with good Bodhisattva, she categorizes into the hero or savior, and then teaching by his own example. Then, of course, the paramitas, 10 paramitas in bad, how the Bodhisattva sometimes acted as a villain, how his karma, came into play. Then he has to decide between the ethics and wisdom. And then in some of the Jataka tales, he acted like a fool. And in some of the Jataka, he has no role to play. So she says that, like in some of the Jataka, for example, in Harita Jataka, it is said that the Bodhisattva can break all other precepts. All 5 precepts he can break, except he can never lie. Even we can find the example of Bodhisattva deceiving people. He has told a lie in one of the Jataka. So, he may assault people, kill, steal, commit sexual impropriety, gamble, and get drunk, because in some of the Jataka, the Bodhisattva is also gambler. So you see, there are this good, where he features as a good man, good personality, a hero or savior, and he's sagacious hero and a compassionate savior. For example, the Dasharath Jataka, which is modeled on, this is one of the variant of the stories of Ramayana. If you are aware with 300 Ramayanas of A.K. Ramanujam, who has done a beautiful work as showing how different narratives are created by who has narrated the story. It's very path-breaking work. I think his essay is now banned in the Indian universities, but he goes on to that. But here is the Dasharatha Jataka, where the protagonist is Rama, and he is shown as a hero, and it's the own Buddhist version of what we can say Ramayana. Likewise, there is a Thai Ramayana. They're all different. There are 300 Ramayanas. So you see, that was a popular story adopted by Buddhists over the period of time. So you see, in Jataka, the Buddha comes as the head of the group. Sometimes he's the head of the group of the merchants. Sometimes he's the head of the group of the animals and birds, and he leads them to safety. He guides them to the right path. And in some of the Jatakas, he is the god Shakra himself, and we have seen what is Shakra or Indra. And he supports Buddhism, and he supports righteous people. And in the Bhadraghata Jataka, he gives a wishing cup to a poor man who was his son in previous birth. In Kachani Jataka, he saves a mother who has been cast out by her son. So you see, he's like a very good person, a hero, a savior. And in a Valahas Jataka, he's a hero. He leads his caravan, and he's and when his caravan, when he's carrying the goods, his ship is wrecked on an island, and they are his teammates are seduced by the Yakinis, but he is the one who avoids the temptation of the 5 senses, and he gets through that journey, and he earns a lot of wealth out of that. So this is how the Bodhisattva controls on his 5 senses. These are beautiful stories. So, I'm not going to go much into that, but, there are some Jataka stories where Buddha is teaching, the Bodhisattva is teaching with his example. Like, for example, in the Dumeda story, the Bodhisattva is a prince who makes a big show of worshipping a particular tree. And when he becomes king, he says he must make an offering to the tree deity, Rukha Devata, who brought him such a good fortune. And, and that this offering must be 1,000 people who indulge in animal sacrifice. But suddenly nobody is willing to perform this. And, the Bodhisattva, had a good sense arising him, and he stops the sacrifice. Then also Gagga Jataka, very interesting Jataka. Very, very funny story also, that how the Bodhisattva, saves his father from the Yakshini, Yakha, who is a very interesting story. I'm going to show you. They both, son and the father, they are staying in a hut haunted by a Yakha who is able to devour anyone who doesn't say long life to you when someone sneezes. So, somebody has to say long life to you. If somebody doesn't say that, then he or she is killed by the Yakha. Hoping to make a meal of the 2 travelers, he makes the Brahmin sneeze, but the Bodhisattva realizes the situation and dutifully says, long life, prompting his father to reply, thereby guaranteeing their immunity. He then reforms the Yakha to everyone's amazement. Very interesting story, very funny story also. And then also there is a Mataka Bhatta Jataka, where, very interesting story. I was teaching by example, which tells of a goat that lops, then whips. So, the goat lops and the whips. As he is being prepared for a sacrifice, being asked why, he explains that he's happy that this is finally his last of the 500 births. where his head must be chopped off as punishment for sacrificing animals. However, he is upset at the thought that the person who is going to sacrifice will have to suffer the same fate. So, the goat is set free, and, there is a gatha, which is very beautiful. If beings knew this was suffering of the origin of birth, not living, no living being would kill a living being, for the murderer laments. So this is the gatha, which is talked. This Chula Kaseti Jatak is also very interesting. This is the one of the Jatakas that I read very early on, like many years back, and it interested me a lot, because here the Bodhisattva gives an example of how industriousness can even help the poor man to become a rich. So here is how the Bodhisattva, finds a dead mouse, and he offers it to a young man, saying that, if anybody can, pick up the mouse and start a business, they will be successful. So he sells the dead mouse, earns some money, does some more work, earns more money, and it goes on cyclically, and the man becomes very rich. So these are very interesting stories. Of course, perfections, they are, Buddha is practicing 10 paramitas. These are very interesting paramitas. I'm going to look at that in the next session. The great 10 jatakas. I'm going to relate all of them in a shorter time. So, of course, the paramitas are dana, shila, nikham, pradnya, virya, kanti, satya, adhishtan, metta, and upekha. And, all these jatakas, particularly last 10 jatakas, they talk about the perfections. So I'm going to come to that, I'm not going to spend the time on that. So, of course, there is, in some of the jataka, the Buddha is a villain, and, he's paying for his karma. For example, in the Litta Jataka, the Bodhisattva is a gambler. And similarly, in the Lomahansa Jataka, the Bodhisattva lives like a naked ascetic. Now, this is not allowed, for an ascetic to be naked, because the staying naked in the forest stems from what is called the wrong view. And there is also a Mudulakhana Jataka. And, in the Jataka, in the Mudulakhana Jataka, the Bodhisattva is an ascetic who loses his ability to levitate after seeing the queen in a state of undress. So he says a naked queen, and he loses his abilities. So you see, there are this very beautiful jatakas which talks about also the Buddha, acting in a bad manner. So you see, there are these stories also there. So you see, this is a very interesting sort of perspective on the personality. Of course, the bad, or the Buddha, the Bodhisattva acted. These are the Jataka stories. I'm not going to go into that much, and there is a lot one can see here. So this is in Andhabhuta Jataka also. The Bodhisattva is a king with a passion for gambling, and he always wins because his every roll of his dice he repeats a verse. All rivers, wind, wine, all forests are made of wood, all women given opportunity to know good. It's a very misogynist sort of verse here. But then, because he has a daughter born, and he repeats this verse, but he wishes good for his daughter, because it's his daughter. So when he started wishing good for daughter, he start losing in the game of the dice, in the gambling. And now he faces the problem as to how he can solve it. Very interesting, very complex stories. And that, I know, if we can create an interest among the people even to read through the jatakas, they can glean a lot into that. So I'm not spending a lot of time here. I'm going to move on. And in these two jataka, the Buddha behaves as a fool, particularly in this very interesting jataka, Dubhiya Makkat Jataka. Makkat is, of course, a monkey, and very interesting Jataka, where the Bodhisattva, who draws some water from a well and gives some to a thirsty monkey. When the monkey has drunk the water, he starts pulling faces at the Bodhisattva, who chastises him for his ingratitude. The monkey replies, because, the Bodhisattva is scolding him, the monkey replies, "Who has ever seen or heard of a well-behaved monkey? Now I will shit on you, for such is our nature." So that is what the monkey rebukes the Bodhisattva, saying that, you don't understand the nature of the people. So, he defecates on the Bodhisattva's head and leaves. Now, this Mahisha Jataka is depicted in the Ajanta caves. It's very interesting also because the Bodhisattva, is a buffalo in that Jataka, and he's tormented by a monkey who repeatedly defecates on his back. And he refuses to kill the monkey, taking comfort in the fact that sooner or later somebody else will. And then he will be free from both the pestering and the guilt of taking a life. And then it happens that this Bodhisattva Mahisha, the buffalo Bodhisattva, he wanders somewhere, and the other buffalo comes, and the monkey mistakes him for the Bodhisattva buffalo, and he starts pestering him, and then he is killed by the other buffaloes. This is another interesting story, and in this Jataka, Buddha is very insignificant. Buddha, merely observes in silence in the Guttapan Jataka, which illustrate the dangers of intoxication, whether by alcohol or by lust. It tells of a dung beetle who gets drunk. This is a very interesting story. It's a very funny story, very interesting story. This Guttapana Jataka. It tells of a dung beetle who gets drunk and challenges a rutting elephant to a duel. So after getting drunk, this beetle, challenges a rutting elephant to a duel like this. A hero comes together in battle with a strong, fierce hero. Come, elephant, turn back. Why do you fearfully run away? This is how the beetle challenges the elephant. Let the people of Anga and Magadha witness our heroism. The elephant replies, of course, the beetle cannot fight the elephant. The elephant replies, very interestingly, I will not strike you with my foot. The elephant says, I will not strike you with my foot, nor with my tusks, nor with my trunk. I will strike you with shit, he says. Let the putrid be killed by the putrid. Let the dirt be killed by the dirt. So that's the Gatha. Very interesting Gatha. So, and here the Bodhisattva has no role. He's silent Devta, and he's silent Devta in 9 other Jatakas. And in 8 more, he merely makes a small comment which has no impact on the events of the story. So you see, this is very interesting way to look at the Jataka tells also from the perspective of how how the Buddha or the Bodhisattva to be Bodhisattva acted in different Jatakas. So there are some very interesting Jatakas, like Jataka stories which talks about justice and human dignity. And particularly there is a very interesting paper written by Patricia Giornelli Palazzo Sai, and she has titled her paper as From Outcast to Arhat, a discussion on human dignity in the Buddhist Jataka. So, in a very interesting paper, which I also put in the group, which you can look at. So, I'm not going to go into that paper, but suffice it to say that there is a lot one can glean or tease out from a lot of Jataka stories about human dignity, equality, community, harmony in the society. One of the purpose of the Jataka tales, beside training ourselves, is to really teach the humanity how to live in a harmonious community or harmonious society. And so this is very interesting. A bodhisattva can be born in any community and in various life forms. So in a way, this shows that there is an interdependence of life, human and non-human. And in Chavaka Jataka, the bodhisattva is an outcast, Chandala. So that time the Chandala is a very different category. The untouchability did not exist the way it started coming in practice after 300 AD. There were, of course, outcast people, the socially, ostracized people like the Chandalas who were born or be Brahmin women and the Shudra man. A very beautiful account is given by Baba Ambedkar. I'm not going to go into that, but you see, the Jataka stories challenges the Brahminical normative system of Varna, Dharma, and Karma. It reverses the story of the karma altogether. For example, in the Losaka or Mitta Vindaka Jataka is about an outcast outside the society, but trained by the Sariputra and Buddha to reach the highest peak. A very beautiful story as to how, this Losaka, who is born to a very poor family, a poor fisherman's family, and, there is a famine, all bad misfortune comes to their village, and their village is invaded by seven times by the king. And this is a story where the Losaka's family single out, saying that they bring the misfortune. So he's a very poor, nothing to eat. And there is then Sariputra sees him, Losaka, and he takes him under his patronage and trains him. And in the end, he attains to Aranship. But there is a story, Jataka story of Mittavindaka, which goes parallelly, the Atitavattu. And it's very beautifully related there. So there are the stories of, justice and human dignity. Then there is, of course, the five precepts are earmarked all the time. And, this is about the just social order is always defined, basic requirement for harmony in society, Shila. And then there is, of course, Adhishila, the higher sort of precepts for the bhikshus and the bhikshunis and, the upasaka, whatever. So, but the basic for every humanity is to have, in order to have the just social order, the bare minimum are the five precepts. So the another interesting fact that has been brought out by the scholars is that the Jataka stories do not question the distribution of property. Like Manusmriti and other Brahminical texts, they talk about, fixed property. They deny the right of property to certain people. But, the Jataka stories, they do not question the distribution of property. Asamika is made samika. This is what is a very beautiful stock phrase that we find in some of the Jataka, and vice versa, which means that non-owner acquires ownership and vice versa. So, there is the distribution of wealth in the Jataka story. So this is Losaka Jataka depicted in Amravati panel. And this is very interesting. This is one of the oldest of the depiction. So, the Jataka story always advocates the righteous king. There are several Jatakas where the crafty or, the evil king is challenged, even killed in one instance by the people. There's sort of a revolution against king because he's not righteous. So the Jatakas teach 10 dharmas to the kings, like Shama Jataka, so that they can rule righteously. The unjust and the stupid kings are criticized in the Jataka stories. And there is a very interesting story in the Gandatindu Jataka, in which the oppressive King Panchala is criticized. And there is a beautiful Gatha here, which I'm going to relate to you, which, vibrates with what is happening today. Rattima Chora Khadanti. The robbers loot by night. Diva Khadanti Tundia. The tax collectors eat by day. They rob us by the day. The robbers rob in the night. The tax collector rob by the day. Rathasmim Kudda Rajasa. In the state of the wicked king. Bahu Adhammiko Jana. There are many unrighteous people. So you see, it starts from the top. So, the top is wicked. It leads to wickedness at the bottom. You see, so there are, the other Jatakas like philosophical Jataka, which is a very interesting Jataka tell, and which needs actually a lot of time to talk about. But because of the paucity of time, I'm not going to talk about it. What I'm going to do today is, just tell you the story briefly, that there is Bodhi, Mahabodhi, who is a, king's counselor, a minister, but he's envied by 4 or 5 of his other colleagues, the similar ministers. And, the kings liked him, but then, he's conspired against, and then he's sent out. He goes to the forest, and the king is ruined by his 4 or 5 counselors, and they teach him the wrong view of how to look at the thing, that there is one minister who is a nihilist. He denies the cause and effect. There is another minister who is a theist. He says that the prime cause is the God created everything. Then there is another minister who is a fatalist. He says karma is everything, you cannot change what is ordained. And there is a materialistic who says that the sensuality is be all and end all, there is nothing beyond that. And there is a scientist of politics who says that the power is all that matters. So there are these 5 ministers, and who are providing wrong view to the king. And seeing that he is in the trouble, our minister come back, the Bodhisattva minister comes back, but he comes with some some I would say some kind of a fanfare, like wearing the skin of a dead monkey. And then when he goes to the court, the everybody rebukes him for having killed a monkey. And then he challenges the nihilist. And I think it's actually it's worth reading this, but because I think we are pressed for the time, I'm not going to go into that. But then uh this is I'm going to read about the God, this thing. He say another believed in supreme being who created all things. And he says it is absurd to say that the universe could exist without a cause. There is a being who is the master of the universe, a being who is eternal and one, and it is in consequence of this being's transcendental volition that the world is cyclically created and destroyed. So that's the God argument. So this is the how Bodhisattva replies. He says that look at him, how devoted he is to his religion, his only delight, how constant to his precept, how adept at achieving his aims. And achieving his aims, how wonderful that alone and emancipated by ascetic life, as he surely must have been, he was able to kill so large a monkey. May his practice now be doubly successful. So you see, he goes to the person who is making the argument for the prime mover of the world. He says, if a supreme being is the creator and performer of all sinful acts, why should those who fear sin bother to foster devotion to him at all? So if the God is the be all and end all, he does everything, then even he commits the sin. So why should we be bother of committing the sin? And why you are trying to criticize me because you think that I have slain the monkey and is wearing his skin. So if he is not the one who commits evil, since you say he abhors evil, then you err in saying that he is the creator of all things. So he refutes the argument that the God is the creator of everything. So these are all worth going, and I am going to share the paper with you so that all can read. But this is a very philosophical take which talks about the paticca samutpad, the conditioned coexistence. There is how everything has come into world because of the cause and effect. And in the fatalist view, the Buddha completely denies that the karma is everything. He says that the karma can be changed, karma can be transformed, not that you are bound to face everything. There are some karmas, if you do, you can reverse your wrong karmas. That's the beauty of the Jataka tale. So, these are some of the things about it. I'm not going to go into that. But there are some elements, Abhidhammic elements in the Jataka stories, which are analyzed by a very renowned Jataka scholar, Saraha Shaw. And I'm going to talk about particularly one story which talks about Javanahansa Jataka, which is very interesting story about, the momentariness, or what is called the Shanikavada, that as soon as the things arise, they pass away. So this is a very beautiful story because there is a Hansa, goose, golden goose, Javan Hansa, and he's a Bodhisattva, and he has the great skill. What is his skill? The Javan Hansa skills. He recounts his great skill, for he can fly faster and farther than any other known creature. So he's the fastest, and he can fly further. And in this story, he's so fast that he can fly faster than any arrow as well. Even if you shoot the arrow and he races with the arrow, our Javan Hansa will win. And this is what is this thing. So the king, seeing this great golden goose, is very impressed with the qualities of the goose, and he wants to Bodhisattva goose, and he wants to befriend him. So he asks the Bodhisattva goose, the king, because he wants to befriend the Bodhisattva king. He says, "Is there anything that could possibly be quicker than you?" Now, this is a very interesting answer. So the Bodhisattva goose says this: "Yes, sir, far faster than me by 100 times or even 1,000 times. No, even by 100,000 times are the lifespans of the constituents of these beings." So Nama Rupa, mind and matter, every animal, whatever exists, has the Nama and Rupa. So what is the faster? The lifespans. So in our bodies, whatever things arise, the thoughts, they are so fast that they are faster than the speed of the arrow, or the faster than any speed in the world. So that is the implication here. So which decay and break up as they come to an end. And so he revealed the breakup of the elements of form as they come to an end, moment by moment, Shanikavada. And this is one of the very interesting themes in the Abhidhamma. There is another interesting theme in the Abhidhamma is the Chetana. And there is a Jataka, like Kuru Dhamma Jataka, where, in the Kuru, in this country of Kuru, all the people have broken certain precepts. But our Bodhisattva says that, what is important is the intention. It is not that, the outer show of practicing the precepts, but what is, intention. So intention is one of the underlying schemes, teachings in the Abhidhamma. But we are looking at this Shanikavada or momentariness, and the king is overwhelmed with this, that everything decays, transience of the mind and matter, nama rupa. It's so shanik that it arises and passes away. We just have the semblance of the continuity, but everything is discontinuous. In Buddhism, it is called the uh, continuous discontinuity. It says that if you hit one ping pong ball, it transfers its energy to another ping pong ball. So you can say that, this is how you see the continuity, but it's a discontinuous continuity. So I'm not going to go into philosophical aspect of that, but the what can hit us looking at the transitoriness of life, the Bodhisattva Gurus gives us a teaching which is very important for us. Says, sire, do not be frightened. Just remember death. Marananusmriti. Just remember death. Follow the teaching. Behave generously. Store merit and be mindful. Be hitful. Be aware. This is the underlying practice of Buddhism, isn't it? What is it? Be aware of the impending death. We can begin not with ourselves. When you begin the metta, you begin with yourselves. But when you think about death, think about those who are very close to you. And then ultimately think about your death. But you think about the death of others. It's called Marananusmriti. Is considered to be one of the highest practices. Follow the teaching, follow the Dhamma of the Buddha. Behave generously. Behave, like the Jataka tells teachers to be generous. Earn a lot of merit by doing good, by practicing the Dhamma, and be mindful. So, this is very interesting. So, these are, you can see the Jataka stories in very different aspects of, this multidimensional sort of, the nature of the Jataka tells. So, now today we are going to look at this Ruru Jataka, which Shilpi is going to read, and I'm going to stop here. I'm going to come back again, explaining you something. So, this Ruru Jataka is the Jataka of the golden deer, and this is from the Barhut. This is before Christ, depicted in the Bahu Stupa, which is now extinct, which is now gone. But you can see this panel where this Ruru Jataka is depicted. So let me stop here. Shilpi, are you ready?
Yes. Am I audible?
You're audible, and if you want, you can switch on your video as well. And I have put here. If you can read
Okay.
it from your text mobile.
Yeah, I can. I
Okay, okay,
can.
okay. So let's listen this Jataka. Then we will go gloss over the Jataka. Very beautiful Jataka. So Shilpi, please go on.
Okay. The Ruru deer. It is not their own, but others. Stuff ring suffering that the virtuous cannot bear. To the open-hearted, no suffering exists, but that of others. Once the Bodhisattva lived as a Ruru deer in a remote forest, part of a vast wilderness far from the paths of men. All manners of plant bloomed there in a glorious abundance. Salas, bakulas, pivalas, hintalas, tamalas, naktamalas, vidula, and nicula trees, shrubs, thickets of shimshapas, tinisas, shamis, palashas, shakas, stands of kusha grass, bamboo, and reeds, kadams, sarjas, Arjunas, Dhavas, Khadiras, and Kutajas. And everywhere the creeping tendrils of vines veil the outstretched branches of the trees. A great many forest animals lived there as well. The Ruru, Rishata, and Sirimara deer, yaks, elephants, Javava oxen, buffaloes, Harina, and Navanku antelopes, boars, panthers, hyenas, tigers, wolves, lions, bears, and many more. But The rarest and most unusual of all the animals was one Ruru deer. Its color was as brilliant as pure gold. His soft fur was dappled with spots of every color, shining like rubies, sapphires, emeralds, and aquamarines. With his mild blue eyes, incomparably large and bright, with his horns and hooves gleaming like gems, he seemed a moving treasury of jewels. Knowing his body to be an extremely desirable object, and aware of this pitiless nature of men, the Ruru frequented only the unknown forest paths. His keen intellect led him to avoid places made unsafe by hunters with their traps and nets, their snares and the holes covered with the twigs and baited with grain. He taught those animals who followed him to avoid such places also, leading them like a father and a teacher. Would not any creature longing for happiness honor such great beauty combined with such fine intelligence and such wonderful behavior? Now, at one time, in that wild part of the forest, the great being heard cries for help from someone who had fallen into a river, swollen by the rains. Carried away by swift current, a man was crying out, "Help me! The river is carrying me off. There is no one to help me, no boat to save me. Quickly! My arms are so tired. I'm sinking. There is no shallow place. Help me! There is no time to lose." These piteous cries of distress struck the Bodhisattva to the core. As he rushed through the thicket, he called out the comforting words he had used in hundreds of past lives to banish fear, grief, sadness, and fatigue. Even now, living as an animal, he succeeded in saying repeatedly and loudly in a human voice, "Do not be afraid, do not be afraid." When the deer came out of the forest, he saw the drowning man in the distance like a precious gift borne along by the river. As a brave warrior attacks a hostile army, the deer plunged into the swiftly flowing river, the thought of rescue more important than his own life. "Hold fast," he told the man, who, overcome by fear and exhaustion, still managed to climb onto the Ruru deer's back. Despite the added weight of his burden and the violence of the current, the deer's extraordinary nobility gave him the strength to reach the river bank. Once safe on the shore, his pleasure at having saved the man was so great that he felt no weariness. He warmed the man's cold limbs, the warmth of his own body, and then he pointed the way out of the forest. The extraordinary help the deer had provided, unusual even from the closest of friends, touched the man deeply, and the beautiful form of the Ruru deer intensified his admiration and respect. Bowing his head to the deer, he said, "Neither kin nor childhood friends would have been capable of the action you have just performed. For my sake, my life is yours. If it could be used to bring you even some small benefit, I would be deeply honored. Whatever you would have me do, I would do to repay your kindness." The Bodhisattva replied respectfully, "Gratitude is never to be wondered at in the virtuous, as it proceeds from the very nature of the Dharma. But nowadays, the world is so corrupt that even gratitude is considered a great virtue. Therefore, I ask only one thing: do not tell anyone about the marvelous animal that rescued you. My beautiful form makes me too desirable a prey. As a rule, people's heart, filled with greed, have little mercy or self-restraint, and so take care to guard your own virtue and my life as well. And remember, treachery to dear friends can never lead to happiness. Do not be angry because I speak so bluntly. I am but a deer, unskilled in the deceitful human art of diplomacy. Indeed, the clever and talented who feign honesty are precisely those who feign even the sincere under suspicion. So, will you make me happy simply by doing as I have asked? The man promised to protect the deer, and after bowing and circumambulating the great being, set out for home. Now it so happened that the queen of that country was endowed with the powerful power of prophetic dreams. Whatever she dreamt, no matter how extraordinary, always came to pass. And at that time, one morning about daybreak, she dreamt of the Ruru deer, sparkling with the brilliance of a heap of jewels. The deer, surrounded by the king and his assembly, stood on a lion throne, preaching the Dharma in an articulate and human voice. Fascinated by this vision, the queen awoke only when the drums were beaten to rouse the king. As soon as she could, she ventured to the king's apartment, where the king received her with the honor she deserved, as well as with sincere affection. Her bright eyes wide with wonder, her lovely cheeks flushed, her voice trembling from happiness, the queen presented him with the amount of her marvelous fame. My lord, she said at the end, please try to find that deer. Beauty will make his palace as splendid as the sky which sparkles with the constellation of the deer. The king knew from experience to trust his wife's vision, partly to please her and partly to satisfy his own desire. He ordered all his huntsmen to search for the Ruru deer. A proclamation was also made in his capital day after day. Somewhere in this kingdom exists a deer with skin of gold, its coat spotted with many colors shining like hundreds of jewels. This deer is celebrated in the sacred text, and some have even seen it. Whoever can reveal the whereabouts of that deer to the king will be provided with 14 acres and 10 lovely women. And the man who had been rescued by the Bodhisattva heard this proclamation day after day, again and again. He was a poor man, much afflicted by the sufferings of poverty, but he was also a mindful man, remembering the great gift he had received from the Ruru deer. Torn between greed and gratitude, his thoughts swung from one direction to the other. What should I do follow, virtue or fortune? Should I uphold the promise to my benefactor rather than the duty to maintain my family? Which is more important, the worldly existence or the heavenly one? Which code should I follow, that of the pious or that of the worldly? Should I taste glory or the modest joy of the inquiet? Which is more important, the present time or the time hereafter? Should I strive for riches or the good cherished by the virtuous? At last, his mind, overcome by greed, came to this conclusion: once I have obtained great wealth, I shall be able to honor my king and my friends, guests, and beggars. I will gain not only the pleasures of this world, but also happiness in the other. With this resolve, he put out of his mind entirely the gift of the roe deer and went to the king. Your Majesty, I know where the roe deer dwells. To whom should I reveal it? The king, full of joy, answered, friend, you may show him to me. And so the king put on his hunting clothes and left the capital, accompanied by a large part of his army. Directed by the poor men, they arrived at the river. The king then encircled the surrounding forest with his forces, and joined by a few resolute and faithful men. The king himself, armed with bow and arrow, entered the thicket. In a short time, the men caught sight of the roe deer, quite and unsuspecting. He whispered to the king, your Majesty, there, there is the glorious deer. Look and be careful. But as he raised his arm to point out the animal, his hand fell to the ground as if cut off at the wrist with a sword. Thus, the one's actions, when directed against those honorable, ones who perform great deeds, bear immediate fruit, provided there is a little to counterbalance them. So curious was the king to catch a glimpse of the Ruru Deer that he did not notice the strange happening. Peering into the middle of the forest, which was dark as rain clouds, the king perceived a form shining with the splendor of jewels, brilliant like lightning flashing from the center of a black cloud. Seeing the qualities of the Ruru deer and entranced by its beauty, the king resolved to have the deer for himself. Drawing his bowstring, he crept upon the animal to be certain of hitting his target. The Bodhisattva, however, hearing the noise of people on every side, already knew that he was surrounded. Seeing the king approach with his arrow ready, he realized there was no escape. In words distinct and articulate, he addressed the king in a human voice. Stop for a moment, mighty prince. Do not shoot me, hero among men. First satisfy my curiosity and tell me who revealed my home to you, far as it is from familiar paths. Who told you there existed a deer such as myself? The king, amazed by the human voice coming from the deer, turned the point of his arrow towards his guide. This man, he said, and the Bodhisattva, recognizing the guide, replied, Alas, it is easier to pull a tree from a raging river than to save from drowning one who is ungrateful. This is how he returned the favor bestowed on him. How sad he could not see that this is not the way to benefit himself. The king became curious. Your words alarm me, he said. I do not understand your meaning. On whose account do you speak so roughly? Is it human or spirit, bird or forest animal? The Bodhisattva replied, No desire to point blame prompted my sharp words, O king. I spoke in order to prevent your guide from doing such a thing over again. Who would use harsh language against those who have committed wrong actions? It is like rubbing salt into the wounds of their own fault. Yet, even to his beloved child, a doctor must apply whatever medicine the illness requires. Your guide was once swept away by the current of the river, and his plight moves me to pity. He whom I rescued has now created this mortal danger to me, O best of men. Truly is it said that contact with the wicked can never lead to happiness. The king turned to his guide and, with a look of harsh reproach, asked, In truth, were you rescued from disaster by this deer? And the man, sweating with fear, pale with misery and despair, answered shamefully, Yes, I was. Evil men, cried the king. Placing his hand upon his bowstring, he added, Do not think this a mere trifle. Anyone whose heart could remain unsoftened by such a gesture is a vile representative of his fellow men. He brings them only dishonor. Why should this vilest of men live one moment longer? With these words, the king grasped his bow in the middle and bent it back, intending to kill the miserable guide. But Bodhisattva, moved by great compassion, placed himself in front of the man, saying, Stop, your majesty, pray, do not strike one already stricken. When he listened to the enticement of his enemy desire, at that very instant he was ruined, his good name lost, his virtue destroyed. Such is the way of the world. Like foolish moths drawn to a flickering light, people are lured by the prospect of riches. Little by little, suffering they cannot bear erodes their integrity, until one day they fall, deluded by their desire. Take pity on this man and restrain your anger. Indeed, if you promised him some reward for leading you to me, give it to him. For look, here I stand with bent head, awaiting your command. Such compassion and sincere desire to benefit the person who had caused him such great harm had a powerful effect on the king. The king's heart was converted. and looking with veneration at the Hindu deer, he spoke softly. Well said, well said, well said, holy being. In showing such mercy to one whose cruelty against you is so clear, you display true humanity while we bear but the shape of men. Since you deem this knave worthy of your sympathy, and since he has been the cause of my meeting such a virtuous being, I will give him the wealth he so craves. To you I give permission to roam freely and safely in this kingdom, wherever you so desire. The Ruru deer answered, Illustrious king, your royal gift is not offered in vain. I accept. But first tell me how I may be of service to you, that your coming here will prove fruitful. In response, the king honored the deer as his teacher and then asked him to mount the royal chariot. Returning to the capital, he gave the deer a reception due an honored guest and invited him to sit on the royal throne. There, the king, together with his wives, his officers, and attendants, urged the deer to preach Dhamma. Gazing upon the creature with reverence and gladness, they asked, People say many different things about the Dhamma. You clearly understand it completely. Please explain it to us. The Bodhisattva, raising his voice and speaking distinctly and elegantly, in soft words said to the king in the assembly, The Dhamma and all its divisions and subdivisions, all its rules and precepts can be summed up briefly. Generate compassion for all living beings, abstain from killing, from stealing, and so on, and give pleasure to all. Consider, Your Majesty, if, through such mercy, people treated each other as they would treat themselves or their families, whose heart would ever harbor wicked thoughts. Cause of all disturbance is lack of compassion, corrupts the body, speech, and mind. It harms the family no less than its strangers. If those who strive for virtue will only remember compassion, only good can result. Compassion engenders virtue, as a fruitful rain causes the crops to grow. Once impressed upon the mind, compassion destroys the inclination to harm any other, and the mind being pure, neither body nor speech can be corrupted. The desire to benefit others increases with pleasure, and from that pleasure, love, charity, patience, and other virtues flow, bringing tranquility and a good reputation. Because of their tranquility, those who are merciful will never arouse suspicion or apprehensions in others. Trusted by everyone, trusted by everyone, they are treated by all as kin. If one's heart is steeped in compassion, no dissension can bring disruption. One's heart is strengthened by compassion. The mind enjoys sweet coolness, like a clear pool with no passion can agitate, no fire of anger destroy. Why say more? The wise firmly believe that all of virtue is contained in compassion. What virtue is there that is not the consequence of compassion? Always strives to show compassion to every living creature, treating them as if they were your own children or as if they were yourself. By such wise conduct, you will win the hearts of your people and purify your royal station. The king praised these words of the wonderful Guru Dear, and together with the citizens, grew intent on practicing Dhamma, and granted his protection to every animal and bird throughout the realm. From this story, one can see how for the virtues no suffering exists, except that of others. It is this we cannot bear. We do not mind their own suffering. The story is also to be recounted when praising the qualities of compassion and when showing how truly virtuous will benefit others even at their own expense. It also treats of the great harm which comes from harming those who are full of love.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Very beautifully read, Shilpi. You almost took it to that particular realm of the Bodhisattva Ruru. And you see how Aryashura has written this beautifully. narrated, beautifully, as if you enter into the forest and you see the actual golden deer with 9 colors. So I'm going to show you something very interesting, that this Ruru Jataka is in Ajanta cave number 17. And it's a single panel here, and it's a one painting where there are all these major episodes from the Ruru Jataka. So at the top, you can see the queen dreaming about, the golden deer, preaching the Dhamma, sitting on the royal throne. So this queen is sharing a dream, and then in the below that, this is what he's telling the man who has seen the Ruru deer, that he has seen it, and then, this is he is brought in the royal chariot to the capital. So here in the corner, you can see that there is a golden deer in the chariot. So there is a hunting party also. Dog is there and all. This is a very beautiful painting. You see the hearts, painted in 5th century AD, maybe before that. So you can see, how this is very beautifully rendered in the Ajanta cave, and this is the final thing where, the our golden deer is teaching the king about, the dharma, and here is also the lion in the den. So you see how this is very beautifully done panel. This is in single panel. This is a single panel where this whole Ruru Jataka is told in the Ajanta caves number 17. So if you ever go to cave number 17, try looking out for this panel which narrates the story of the Ruru deer. Now here is another very interesting sort of a rendering. I found it very fascinating in Danhong caves, in cave number 257. No, not Mughal cave, Mogao cave. Sorry for the spelling. It's a Mogao cave. Danhong, this is the place in China. It's a very famous place. And here in the cave number 247, they have depicted it. This red shows the panel, and there are 10,000 Buddhas at the top, and there are the singers at the top, and there is one big Buddha here. I'm going to, touch upon that. But this is the episode of the Ruru Jataka painted there. Like episode 1, the man is drowning. Episode 2 is there. He's saved by the Ruru Jataka. Episode Ruru Deer. Episode 3, episode 4, the queen is dreaming, and he's brought in the capital in the chariot, and he's teaching the Dhamma to the people. This is a very beautiful rendering in the Mogao caves, and you can see it. How beautifully this is done. So this is how he's promising to not to tell that such a deer exists, but here the king with our Ruru deer, and is the beautiful rendering of it. So you see, this Ruru Jataka is brought in a framework of a 10,000, 1,000 Buddhas here, and showing that the Buddha is at the top of the Jataka. So you see a kind of the cosmic, or the sort of the presence of a compassion at the heart of the Buddha. Isn't it? Jataka is about the compassion. It's very beautiful Jataka. And there's a Buddha is shown with the retinue of again 1,000 Buddhas. So it sort of brings the story in the context of the Buddha himself. And the story is so popular that it was made into movie in 1988. It is 25 minutes uh, graphic movie made in China. I'm going to share it in the group. It's available in the YouTube. 9 colored deers. Except that there is something wrong in the movie about the character of the man who was saved. They call it, unfortunately, untouchable. So you see, there are all these rendering, and there is a Chinese movie on Jataka, and also this Jataka Tales is also made in the video games today. So you can learn a lot from this Jataka and how it is rendered in the different Buddhist sites. So I will stop here, and we'll open it up for any discussion. Thank you again, Shilpi, for reading it so beautifully. You almost took us there at that time. So anything that you would like to share, any comments by anyone, we will open it up for any discussion.
Jai Bhim, Mangesh, this is Archana.
Yes, Archana, please go on.
Yeah. So firstly, I just want to thank for such a wonderful session because I know it started before 2 weeks, but I could not able to attend because I was traveling that time. But just to see, I mean, how rich treasure we have in our, Buddhism. And all these Jataka, while you were explaining all those stories, it has a deep essence, values, ethics, and morals, which we should, we ourselves should understand and we should teach our children as well because it has such a deep meaning. And we are just missing out with all this treasure. And I really appreciate the way you have started this, session, and it's really useful. I mean, at least to my understanding, I'm reflecting on the whatever I heard today, and I'll try to absorb more and more such stories. And I would like to spread this word across so that many people can understand what exactly we are witnessing and what we are missing actually. So for me personally, it was a very nice experience, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Archana. Thank you. So anyone would like to reflect, share the reflection, or add or comment on anything, please go ahead. We'll go for another 2-3 minutes before we conclude for today.
Jai Bhim, Dr.
Yes, Umesh.
Thank you so much once again for such a wonderful session. Can we see the things in Jataka in the that you have related with the painting, and what are the other means where we can search for these stories and make it significant in our understanding? Is there any other forms also available?
Yeah. There are dhammas. There are like performative arts popular in Burma, Sri Lanka, and in Thailand. And there are these beautiful Jataka dramas, which I think we are lacking in India. And I hope one day, because as we have been seeing in the 2 sessions, that how important it is to have the narrative thinking. The normative thinking is not always going to work. We need stories, we need dramas, we need performing arts. And the Jataka, are the civilizing sort of stories. They civilize us, they make us, more human. And they can be, I'm going to talk to show you, how they are enacted as the psychodramas so that we can deeply heal ourselves. And so there are, of course, music. They are musically rendered in the Buddhist countries. They are dramatized. They are, narrated in the Viharas. For example, Kane and Vishaka might tell us in the Sri Lanka, in the olden days, people used to sit in the circle. Somebody will narrate Jataka tell, and people will enjoy the stories and the lessons drawn from it. So, it's a part of the global culture. The Jatakas have been always the part of the global culture. They were the first stories, I would say, maybe one of the few first stories in the world which were represented in on the card on the stones, like Barhut. You can see Ruru Jataka in Barhut. You can see it. There's so many Jatakas panels. You don't even see the Brahminical stories. You don't see Ramayana and Mahabharata card. They are like before Ramayana and Mahabharata, as it were. Because you don't see Ramayana and Mahabharata carved as early as the Buddhist stories were carved in the Buddhist caves. So it's a very interesting sort of thing that they can be dramatized, painted, sculpted, sung, and narrated like a story, the way Shilpi narrated today. They are made into films. I'm going to share the link of this 9 color deer, and there is an opera on the on several Jataka. I've shared already the link of that in the group. So this genre is so multifaceted, as we titled our session today, the multidimensional nature of the Jatakas. So I think we will explore more of these. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe
Thank you
Kane and
so much.
Vishaka, would you like to throw some light on that? Yes.
Thank you. Yes. I enjoyed very much today. And I'm very, very interested also of finding the places where we can see them illustrated, the stories illustrated. And we're looking too. You've inspired us to do some research and find out. And we're speaking next week to some Americans Buddhists who, anyway, we'll be talking about this sort of thing with them as well. I find myself obsessed because of the news with the stories of war that I see. I mean, we've got genocides going on all over the place. We've got the Rohingya genocide and from Burma. We've got obviously Gaza, which is just unbelievable right now. And it's all being broadcast. And I'm really interested in the stories of the Bodhisatta as peacemaker, where he, as an advisor, and the strategies that are involved in some of this, the ways that he avoids conflict always and teaches the king how to avoid war. It's really inspiring. It's really wonderful, and it seems so topical. Especially in these depressing, dangerous times. But thank you so much for pointing us in the direction of the art, which we haven't been paying too much attention to, and also the dramatizations that we can find in every culture. It's wonderful. Realizing that when people went to the temples in everywhere, when they went to the temples, they read the art. I mean, the stories are there. They knew them. They were instructive. They were not decoration. They were teaching. And to be surrounded by that, and I had neglected that. We've not paid that attention to it that it deserves. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken and Vishaka. And for others, their books will be arriving in India, and those who want, they can contact me or send a request in the group. They're very amazing collection, and I think everybody should have those books in English, and they are not very highly, they don't cost very high. Very beautifully done books, and we can get it at Indian rupees, 2,000 rupees. And anybody, I got a few requests. So, if you want a set of that, please let me know. Okay. So if there is nothing from anybody,
Sir, one submission is there.
Yeah, Umesh.
Sir, now our country, India, is under the transformation of education in NEP 2020. And here are the options of including all these jatakas and all these things in this NEP, because there is one segment, value addition enhancement courses. In that, at a certain forum, we should write to the universities and all the education ministers to include these kind of things in the value added courses that is optional for the students to learn. It will be a great help and shaping this knowledge to our coming generation, sir.
Very good point. Maybe we can think about that and write to the government. But the community education, in the community education, Jataka has to become the part and parcel of the community education, because the stories go long way from generation after generation.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So thank you, Umesh. That's a very good point.
Thank you, sir.
So let's end this session today, and we will be meeting next week with another fascinating sort of stories and a complete path to the Bodhisattvahood. And in the next, I'm going to talk about the therapeutic value, or psychotherapy in the Buddhist Jatakas, which is another going to be very interesting. And then the 6 will be more interesting. So thank you all, and see you in the next week.
Thank you, sir. Jai Bhim, sir.